Попробуй,
Я
Сань.
же пила.
Нет, Сань, ну попробуй, мою.
Не хочу этого.
So, what's the solution?
Now I'll do how it's been done in court. The pie will be delivered to the new dislocation.
Тихо,
No,
тихо.
the new location.
Location.
Кулаками машут. Хороший.
What are you going to do tomorrow early?
Maybe sleep,
Well, and then
and then Gleb has invited us to a meal.
Gleb
Gleb, the publisher.
Uspensky,
Gleb
The one-
Uspensky.
where you
We'll
the
be in
Dutch,
Dacia, yeah.
Mhm.
And we will be with Eugene,
Mhm.
the film director,
Mhm.
maybe his girlfriend, his wife, his lover, his...
О, а я...
Глеб пригласил на завтра, а это дай своему племяннику.
А вот я не знаю, что это остался один,
So
надо
Nicolai,
поесть.
Nicolai, you have to finish that.
Yeah.
I can't.
Okay.
Really, I can't.
Then
Really, I can't. It's yours, Michael.
давай, он не...
I used to be called Daddy Dustbin.
Иди сюда. Кушай. Ой.
That's in the tomorrow you will be at Gleb's dacha, yeah?
No, we don't go to Gleb's Dacia. We are eating in Moscow somewhere. I can't say where. I don't know where.
Gleb.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a question to you. Gleb is he's working in the printing, publishing house, yeah?
World. Publishing World.
Yeah. Didn't you think about some contact with him concerning publishing? Perhaps it's a good business here, you know? With Gleb.
With contact in what way?
What way, I don't know. You must talk about it with Gleb. Perhaps he has an idea and you have a good ability, and so you will be partners, some kind of partners in publishing business. That's my mind so sharp.
But to be in business
Yeah.
is to be in control.
Well, you know, I understand to be in control.
And to be in control
Yeah.
when you're a long way from the action is difficult.
No,
Just been through so many different things to us.
I am the last of Magikan.
The last of the Mugginses.
Micheal, be so kind. Pass me the ashtray and cigarette and lighters and holder.
All the smoking paraphernalia.
I'll pass you the cigarettes and the ashtray, but not the lighter.
And cigarette holder. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Now,
So what
So-
would you like me to begin?
well, there were some questions from yesterday that it wasn't clear what were the answers.
Не кашляй. Закурил? Кашляй.
It's gonna be.
You want some more juice?
Well, there were some questions which were
Yes. For example,
yeah.
one question is, during the 1917 revolution,
Yeah.
why did your father come to Harbin?
He didn't come to Harbin. He was regressing, or he was running away from the Red Army towards Siberia.
But what Harbin is in China, so why?
Harbin is in China, but at that time we had the Russian government had priority on that piece of land, Harbin. It was Chinese land, well, like Hong Kong. Understand?
So you had a Russian enclave.
Yeah.
So your father was fighting against the communists.
No. In the army, no, he wasn't fighting against communists. He was fighting against those who participate in the big war, First War, Entente.
Okay, but the revolution was the Reds against the Whites. But were the Reds communists? Yes. And the Whites were not communists. The Whites, the Whites were fighting on behalf of the Tsar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when he came to Harbin, he was fighting on the side of the Whites.
That's right, on the side of the line.
Okay, so now when he came to Harbin, they were running away from the Red Army.
Who was following them.
Following them.
Yeah.
Okay. And but before he left China, he was sick. He hurt his feet.
Not before. It was at that time.
I see.
At that time, he has frozen his feet,
Right.
and he was evacuated to Harbin, to the hospital, where they amputated his feet,
Right.
and he didn't. He was expelled from the army,
Right.
right? And left to live there. Mother, his wife, my mother, this one over there, she lived at that time in South Ukraine.
That was a long one.
South Ukraine.
Это можно убраться, да?
While my dad was... Маша,
А.
я попрошу, мне нужно кусочек льда и кваску налить.
Что?
Вот сюда. Лед положить и кваску налить. Да? Ну, пожалуйста. What are you smiling? Is it something funny I said or looked like?
No, it's the way that you're clearly the boss here.
So, my father left my mother in the place where she lived, and that was South Ukraine. When he went to participate in the big World War, First War. My mother still kept living in that place, and he was already in Siberia with amputated feet. Then he wrote a letter and called my mother with the children who were born here in Russia to come to Harbin. He did it so because he was afraid that he would be shot because he was in
Все, хватит.
because he was
Он
in
так холодный.
because he was in Kolchak army.
Так холодный.
You understand?
What is the Kolchak army? What is it?
Kolchak was a very skillful commander, army commander of one of the armies, Tsar's armies. He was a military man with a very great name, Kolchak. If he would return from Siberia back to the place which he left before he has been enrolled into the army, the Reds would certainly assassinate him.
I see.
So he couldn't return. He didn't he didn't participate in any actions against Red. He was a soldier.
So he just did what he was told.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's what I wanted to say. He did what he was told. And when my mother, with the rest of the children, who are all elder than I am, arrived in Harbin, a bit later, that was 1916. 1960, just before the revolution, before. The Reds were at that time not in full strength, but the revolution was rising. When my mother came to live to Harbin, I was born there. All of my brothers and sisters were born in Russia, and I was born in Harbin.
So you were the youngest.
I am the youngest. They showed so. That's me.
Okay.
What else?
Okay. And then, where was Lisa born?
Also in Melitopol. Melitopol.
Where is that?
That is South Ukraine.
South Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
And
she-
all the
she-
rest children also are from that place.
From South Ukraine.
Yeah.
rather than
Wha-
Russia.
What is
South
that?
Ukraine is the border of South Ukraine and Poland is very near. It's approximately at the same place, South Ukraine and Poland.
Okay. Why did your family move from Harbin to Shanghai?
Because, as I have told you already before, it was the beginning of Chinese and Japanese war. It's quite known that in 1930 something was a war between Chinese and Japanese. The commander of Chinese army was Chiang Kai-shek. Did you ever hear him? Yeah. And while we were living in Shanghai,
No. This is why did the family move from Harbin to Shanghai?
to escape death, because they were bombing there.
The Japanese were
The
bombed.
Japanese were bombing, and how they call it, the bombs fell right opposite our house, and so on. The representatives of all foreign governments, the consulate, offered their people, Americans, English, and so on, to leave this place. We had two choices. One choice was to go to America, where my sister Rebecca was living. She invited us to America. And the other choice was to Raphael, who was living in Russia.
No. This is when you were in Shanghai,
Yeah,
not in Harbin.
that was when we were in Shanghai, you're right.
So, why did the family move from Harbin
Or
to
from Harbin to Shanghai.
Yeah.
Because, we moved there for a better life.
I see.
Rachel was quite she had quite a good prosperity, Rachel.
Yeah.
And she invited us to come to her, to live closer to each other. That was the only reason.
Rachel was married to the tobacco director.
He was the director of United Tobacco Stores, Tom Moss.
Okay. Now yesterday,
No, excuse me. I'm mistaken. She wasn't married to Thomas. Еще это Маша пиво там принеси. She wasn't married to Thomas. I'm mistaken. To Thomas was married Rebecca, and Rachel was married to an Englishman,
A Scotsman.
Huh?
Scotsman.
Scotchman. Bill Kane, his
Oh, okay. So he was an Englishman then.
English.
Because Rachel, no, we're talking about Lisa.
Lisa.
Lisa was married
Lisa
to a
went-
Scotsman.
Lisa went by herself. In Shanghai, there were already living our relatives, far relatives in Shanghai, and they also invited Lisa and all of us to come to Shanghai because they promised us a better life than in Harbin. You understand?
I see. Okay. So how old were the children when you moved from Harbin to Shanghai?
I was then I don't remember now. Well, I was perhaps 11 or
And if you were 11, how old is the oldest one?
the oldest one is Ike.
Mm-hmm.
He is 18. I have written his birthday, but I don't remember now.
But how many years older than you is Ike?
Much.
20 years older? 18 years older?
About.
Right. I see.
About, yeah.
Okay. So when you moved to Shanghai, he was already gone. He wasn't part of the family really anymore.
No, he was also in Shanghai.
Oh, he was also in Shanghai.
Yes, because his wife Maria,
Mhm.
she was a very good specialist, chocolate specialist. Chocolate. She was, that was her specialty, to make chocolate.
Mm.
And the branch of the factory where they made chocolates was in Shanghai.
I see.
And so she was moved to Shanghai to work there, and she went there to with her husband Ike.
Mm.
That happened such.
Mm.
So.
Mm. Okay. And then how old was Lisa when she married? I think the name is Bill Wiley.
Willie.
Yeah,
Oh,
Bill Wiley.
Wiley.
Yeah.
It was much later. Lisa had a first husband
Mm.
whose name was John Barrington.
John Barrington.
He was a gunnery sergeant of the United States Army. She was married to him. Then I don't know what happened because we had no contact. But I received suddenly a letter, and I was even feared to open the letter because I was already in Russia. A letter with a foreign stamp, and I didn't know what to do with it. You understand? Nevertheless, I opened the letter, and there she informed us, Joe and me, and Father, who already were here, that she is married to another man, Wiley. That's all what I can tell you about her. We received several letters. We couldn't let her know how dangerous was it for us to receive letters from abroad. We couldn't find the way to inform her.
Could you not send her a letter? Did she not give you the address?
we sent her a letter, we sent one letter, where we tried to inform her that she shouldn't write to us. It was before our seclusion, but we were all enrolled in a list as people who are going to bomb up the Kremlin. And we, namyok, that is hint, we hinted. There we wrote in the letters that we live very well, all of us are working, we have such a good country and our good leader.
Listen, you
No,
wrote us.
shh.
Yeah, but Sasha wrote us a very similar letter.
Please, this is important.
Absolutely.
Michael. Yeah. Sorry, Sasha.
It's all right, don't fight with each other. Keep peaceful.
Let him finish and then talk afterwards. Don't interrupt. Yeah.
He doesn't interrupt me.
So you wrote a letter to explain that your life was very good.
That better cannot be. It could not be better life than we had here. Nevertheless, the country at that time, we all bought food products by cards. Such cards for bread and all the other things.
So if you were writing her a letter explaining how good life was, how did you hint?
How we hinted her. We told her, you will laugh now, that Auntie Rosa is very ill. We invented such a name, Auntie Rosa.
Yeah.
That Auntie Rosa is very ill, and we can't see her because she cannot stand any disruption in her life. So we don't see her so as not to disturb her. Approximately that. I think that she understood. She understood.
Because she didn't write to you again.
She didn't know. She didn't write, and Rachel didn't write, and Becky also didn't write. They all, I suppose, they let each other know about the situation here, and it was known. Many people knew how it was in Russia then. All the foreigners, living abroad.
Sorry, Michael. So we also received a similar letter.
We knew that you were trying to tell us something.
Oh, excuse me. I will tell you one thing, which you certainly must remember. There was a time when Lisa and Rachel were going to arrange our meeting with them in England.
Right.
And Rachel, no, not Rachel. Yes, Rachel. She informed us that Edna is going to supply us with a room where we can feel ourselves good enough, and so on. And then, when the time came up to solve this problem, the situation in our country was getting worse and worse, and I wrote to you that with great pleasure we would meet with you, but we cannot do it because Maria's house in the village was burned. We write a letter to Lisa that we can't go to England at that time because Maria's house got burned in the village where she had a house, and we must go and see what we can do with what was still can be used. That's the letter we wrote to you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not true.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
So the hint was,
Yeah. That we
They
can.
couldn't come.
Yeah, he's right, he's right. The hint was that we cannot come to you because of the situation which was at that time in our country. And the situation changed like wind in the May. 1 month all was alright, the second month died one of the leaders, then again something, then such not stable there.
Stability.
stability. Now, Sasha, yesterday, the film finished
Yeah.
when you were talking about your interrogation. So you were talking about after you had been arrested,
Yeah.
and they had put you in the cell, and then they interrogated you 13 times, and then they released you, or you thought you were going to be released,
Yeah.
but then they gave you this sentence of 10 years in prison,
Right.
and then you went to a church, and in the church there were 600 people,
Yeah.
and then you met your father. So that's, and then that was the finish.
That was the
Yeah.
end of the first part.
Yeah.
Now, what do you want from me now?
Continue,
To continue.
if you don't mind.
I don't mind now because since I began, I must finish.
Mm.
I must go to the end.
Mm.
And that is quite a story which makes some people cry when they listen to what has happened further on. We all were put into the train, into wagons, which the cows and other animals are being transferred in such wagons. And the direction was Karaganda, Kazakhstan. It's a long way to Kazakhstan, a very long way. We passed the desert. It took us about 2 or 3 weeks till we reached the Kazakhstan, the terminal. In Kazakhstan was a camp where from all jails, people who were sent to Siberia were concentrated in that camp. The name of the camp was Karabas, Blackhead, Karabas. That's in Kazakh. When we came there, when we were not came there, when we were pulled into there, they pulled us there. They put us to live in barracks. You know what a barrack is?
Mm-hmm.
The barrack was made not from wood or briquette, but saman. Saman, that is, excrements, animal excrements
Mm-hmm.
with, and
Mixed with soil.
yeah. My father was with me before we arrived to Kazakhstan. We passed a place which was called Bataysk. And that place, Bataysk, we had to go from one station of the railroad to another station, to another railroad.
Can I ask you a quick question? Why was your father with you? Was that just coincidence?
It's such a coincidence, I don't know.
Mm.
Perhaps because he was a cripple, he was without feet. That is why.
Mm.
When we were going throughout the town to the other station, walking, my father couldn't follow all the rest of the people because he had no feet. And I stayed with him. So when the very many people, perhaps some thousands, went away far from us, only 2 of us were behind.
Mm.
And a guard watching this of dislocation. About 3 or 4 hours later than the rest of the people, because we couldn't move fast enough. Understand?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they put us in this camp in the Kazakhstan, in the desert, where there was no water. Well, there was only, how it's called, just a minute, I'll tell you. I wrote it here. Just here. The barracks were made. The barracks were made from plywood.
Mm.
You see? And Nare's, well, sleeping place was 3 stories sleeping place. But that doesn't trouble us. The thing which troubled us, there were millions and billions of bed bugs.
Mm.
So we couldn't be living or sleeping in the barrack.
Mm.
The bed bugs, they climbed up to the ceiling and spring from there like a parachutist on us. Yeah. The one people who had fur coats, they you know, the inside out, they made inside out, and that's the only way they could escape of the bed bug's bite.
So was it hot or cold?
Pardon me?
Was it hot or cold in this camp?
At that time it was very hot.
Very
Very hot. Desert place, like a desert. Very hot. Each day, an ox with a, how is it, about an ox with a cart would bring for us a big barrel of water.
Mm.
And all the people who were there, and there were very many people, perhaps several thousands, and oxes, 5 or 6 oxes, everybody rushed to get the water out of the barrel. We didn't have any vessels, so with caps and boots and whatever who had, we took the water, and that was the only chance to survive.
So your father, how old was your father in this camp when he arrived at this camp?
About 50.
50. So
Yeah.
he was still a young man.
Uh-huh.
Hello, this is the Lachinsky resident. Dobry niczy. Okay, wait for 1 minute. I think it's one of your patients.
Алло? Людочка, я сейчас не могу говорить.
So,
Oh goodness me, that's where you hide them, yeah?
Pardon me?
Quiet.
This is where you hide your cigarettes.
I
okay.
don't hide. I'm smoking quite legally.
So your father was 50 when he arrived in this camp. How old was your father when he died?
Well, I think that he died about 3 years later. That means 38, about, you know, my brother Joseph here, he has all which concerns his father's conclusion. He received all this, you know,
Yeah.
foil.
Yeah.
File or foil? File, he received, yeah. So it was about 3, that means 1940, I think.
So you were separated from your father
Yes.
before he died.
Yes.
So how did you get separated from your father?
Oh, that's a very tough question. There was an order for all cripples to be transferred in a special camp. All other ones who were tough enough and can work would be dislocated in another place. So my father was enrolled in the list to the cripple camp. That's when we were departing. The ox who brought us water, she had a cart, and they gathered all the cripples, put them on the cart, and there's a zone with a wire, how do you call it?
Barbed wire.
Huh?
Barbed wire.
Yeah, barbed wire. And that's one obstacle, and before that another zone, also barbed wire. I went to say farewell to my father. All the ones who were in camp, they were watching how the people, invalids, were being transferred to the other camp, well, simply for death. And I, looking at my father, he was sitting at the edge of the cart, face to me. And I was about 10 meters from the gate and the zone which was forbidden to cross. So my father, he was sitting there, and when the cart went forward, he began waving his hand, and I absolutely forgot that I'm in camp. The only mind was that I'm departing with my father. That is, I mean to say, that is the last moment and last day and last hour that I see him. So I slowly went ahead to the gate. I passed one zone. Nobody said, the guards didn't say anything. And when I was more closer to the gate, there was a shot, a rifle shot. And my father fell because oxes got afraid, they pulled. And my father, sitting face back to oxes, he fell down. And I thought that he was shot. But I wasn't quite sure whether he was shot or I am shot. I was shocked. Well, then the guards helped him to sit back on that. I saw that he was alive. I was certainly crying, and many of the campers cried when they saw such a picture. And so the oxes, they go very, very slow, you know, little by little, foot by foot, they go. He was going further, further until he disappeared from my view. And that was the end of our connection, and that was the end of our, the life of my father. He died there in the Karabas, but in another camp, cripple camp. Cripple is right? Or
Yeah.
Cripple camp. He died there.
So what was the shot? Why was a shot fired?
The guard must, not aware,
Well, it was a warning shot.
warning. He must warn. The first shot, he shoots into the sky, he is warning. And the second, he shoots you, means me, because
Right.
I came too close to the forbidden zone.
I see.
It was forbidden to be so close. There was a certain distance which you must keep.
And where was your mother? Well, first of all, let me ask you a question. What was your father accused of?
That's a comedian part of everything negative. That he was a spy, that he was a man who gave birth not to normal people, but to spies. All your sons and your daughters, they are all spies. You specially came to Russia, invaded Russia, to blow up the Kremlin, to find some secret materials which you had to, you must be, to transfer them to the governments which you were working for.
And where was your mother during this period?
My mother died when I was 5 years. She died in Harbin.
I see.
She died there.
How did she die?
It was at home. She had heart disease. And Volodya, that's my brother physician, he was then being interested in medicine. He was curing her as he could, and we invited doctors and so on, but nothing could be done. At that time, nothing could be done. She died at home quietly, and that's when I lost my mother. It was about 1921, I think, that year.
So who acted as your mother? Because when you're 5, it's a very young age.
Yeah.
So who acted as your mother? Was it your elder sisters?
Rachel.
Rachel. I see.
Rachel.
So this is why Rachel is inviting you to Shanghai.
Right. This is why she was inviting in Shanghai, and that is why she wanted us to meet her in England, where she lived the last time.
Yes, okay. So what is the age difference between you and Lisa?
And Lisa,
Yeah.
oh. Well, I can say only approximately.
Uh-huh.
I think about 20 and something more years.
More than 20 years?
Yes.
Okay.
So Lisa died in 1980, and she was
72.
She was, yeah, okay, 72. So
You know when
that's
Lisa
good.
died, or you don't know about it?
Yeah,
The
well,
date and how she died?
Well, I was old enough in England to be aware of her death. I went to her cremation. Yeah. And it was the first time I saw my mother cry. So, so how long did you stay in the Blackhead camp for?
In Karabas?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Not very long. we were then transferred further to the north. And it was Krasnoyarsk, the capital of Siberia, Krasnoyarsk, over there. At that place in Krasnoyarsk, there was a commission who made selection of those who could live over the pole and those who couldn't. Well, I certainly could. I was a young man, so they enrolled me. I had a speciality, and the place where they wanted us to, where they wanted to transfer us, needed a specialist. It was the moment when the Norilsk Combinat, the Norilsk plant combinat, was being built.
So what was your specialty?
I was a medical worker. I studied in Pyatigorsk. That's where Volodya was living. I told about you before. And I was enrolled into Institute of Balneological Institute, where I studied about, I think, 4 years. And those 4 years were just enough to recognize me as a medical worker. So I had a formula, that's a passport of each secluded person, where there was written that I have connection with medicine. And that's why they transferred me to over the pole. But
The polar circle.
over the pole circle, Zapolyaya, this is pole, and then further on, more further. Am I explaining right or not?
Yes.
Yeah, keep
Yeah.
going.
Right.
And then when you arrived there, what happened?
Many things happened then. First of all, the most tragical fact is, while we were traveling from Krasnoyarsk to the place of destination, that is Dudinka, Port Dudinka, 14 days we flew on that river. The river is called, I suppose you know it, Yenisei. Yenisei, one of the greatest, biggest river of the world, Yenisei. But the boat, not the boat, I don't know how it is called, you know, it's a vessel.
Barge.
Barge also, was metallic, not wood. And that year, that was 1938, there was such a hot summer. And we, us was 600 people in this barge, were all obliged to be in the barge down below. It was so hot, like an oven. You see, you know what I mean, yeah? When you understand, please say that you understand. And with like an oven. And many people, after a few days of traveling, felt so bad that the convoy had to pull them out from the depth of the barge and let them breathe a little bit of fresh air. The stairs which go from the bottom of the barge on the, well, how is it called?
The deck. The deck.
On the deck.
Yeah.
There was you know, such cover,
Yeah.
metal. So we only, there was a big quay of people who stand, and each one had 1-2 minutes to take fresh breathe
And then they go down.
and then go down, and so
Yeah.
circular. Otherwise we wouldn't be alive. Well, as you see now, I passed through this devil, no devil,
Hell.
hell. I passed through this hell. When we arrived to the Dinka, that's far than Pole. We were put into a barrack, and first of all had a disinfection, that's from bugs and fleas and so on. They made us, undressed us naked, and all our wearing put in a sort of a oven to kill all the bugs which we had on us, which we fed by our body.
But the guards also had to live in very difficult
Very
conditions.
difficult, very difficult.
So what was the incentive for the guards in these places?
What was what?
What was their incentive? Why were they there?
First of all, they had a very big chance to command with people, and they were so uneducated and so low
Class.
low class, sentimentally low. They were enjoying it. Most of them were Ukraine. That's why, excuse me, that's why I don't like Ukraine people. Ukraine and the ones from the Asiatic, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, they were guards. They had their meal. They had the uniform, and that was just enough for them. That satisfied them. But their life was certainly also very poor.
So how long did you stay in this new location?
In Dudinka, we stayed in Dudinka we were on quarantine. You know what a quarantine is?
Quarantine.
Quarantine. 2 weeks in Dudinka. And then another commission, qualified commission, who made a choice who must go further on to the combinat of nickel plant, to build the nickel plant, and who should be left here, I mean in Dudinka. Well, I was in the list for those who must go and build the combinat. The railroad I told you about was built in the summertime. It was not wide railroad, but narrow railroad.
Narrow gauge. Narrow gauge.
Low gauge.
Narrow gauge. Narrow.
Narrow gauge. And every 2 or 3 miles traveling on that train, it was open train, just platform. The platforms went out of the rails,
Became derailed.
became derailed because due to the hot weather that time, the snow all
The tracks expanded.
no, not the track, the snow.
So underneath the track was uneven.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. The snow had melted.
Melted, right.
I see.
The snow melted, so the wagons all fell
Right.
to both sides. We should get off the wagon with our hands lift the wagon and put it again on the
Tracks.
track and go ahead. And that was about 10 or 15 times before we reached Norris. There were already people there in Norris. We thought that we were first, but we weren't first. There were already people there. Well, due to the prisoner custom, the new ones who came went to gather information about the camp. Where is it easier to work? Where better is food on what works, and so on. Well, that was usual. The place where we arrived was the barracks was made of plywood. You understand?
Yeah, plywood.
Plywood. I mean to say that over the pole, a barrack with a plywood made of plywood.
Yeah.
How can people live in that place?
Because it's too cold.
40 degrees centigrade.
Minus.
Minus 40.
40 minus.
Minus, certainly minus. 40 degrees centigrade. Poor God, at a snowstorm, 20 or 30 miles an hour. So it's impossible to live. It's just impossible. But we live. Not for a long time, because closer to winter, a bit later, they began to build barracks of from stone. And those stone barracks, from outside it was cold, and from inside the expiration on the walls, on the ceiling, was pouring like a shower. Expiration. Because in one of the barracks there lived about 200 people. And except that, we dried our clothes. And our clothes is that what everyone could have with him. It was a blanket or something else, you understand? Such was our clothes. After how many? About 2 months, we got new dress, polo dress. And our work was to dig a tranchea.
Trench.
Trench, where the pipes are being,
Where you put the pipe, where you lay the pipes.
but the earth
It's
is
frozen.
everlasting
Permafrost.
thermoplasm. So to dig or to pick such a bit, it takes a whole day. With such a weapon. And the rule is, if you don't dig 1 cubic meter a day, your food ration, will be cancelled to absolute minimum. You see? They were giving us 600 grams of bread, 600 grams. That's a bit more than a pound. And some liquid instead of soup. But the general director of the combinat, was a very good man. He was a very good man. He also was formally included, but the government was in the need of his knowledge, and they let him free. But he didn't forget his inclusion formally, and he did all what he could to make our being more or less suitable, more or less. That was 1938.
But if you were a medical specialist, why were you digging a trench?
I was doing that what was more needed at that moment. Not my medical knowledge, but the trench was needed first of all.
And were you guarded? Were you locked in the barracks?
No,
No. So you had freedom to move around?
no, we had freedom to move only in the space of the camp. A barrack, and all around is the barbed wire. How do you?
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire.
Huh? And that is a very, very little space, and that's all. But the barrack wasn't closed. So if in the night, for instance, you want to sit alone to think about something, you can go out and sit down, think of what you want, but don't say what you want, only think about it.
So did you have any friends inside this barrack?
Sir,
And could you talk openly with your friends?
no. Everyone was afraid of his opponent, of his friend. And that was the guarantee of your safety. The guarantee of safety. Nothing, not one single mind of politics or something of that sort. Nothing absolute. We only talked of work, of our family, of the time when it will be warmer, the sun will rise. That was the first time. But during several years later, we all knew each other very well. We got so acquainted that we could sometimes trust a person.
So how many years were you in this barrack for?
10 years.
You stayed in this one location for 10 years?
No. Then began the Second World War. And the regime, you know what am I right? Regime, yeah, was more severe, each time more severe. As bad as it was on the front, it was just got worse in the camp. When it was good on the front, in the camp was also better. We got sometimes a little meat and so on, so we knew that our army is advancing someplace. 1943. No. 1942. I was called out by the seclusion commander, as I was called when I was in the jail to the chamber, and he said, tomorrow you're going to be dislocated to another camp.
Relocated?
Relocated to another camp. And I never thought that anything better awaits me ahead. I only thought of that, how worse it is there.
You thought it must be worse.
Certainly. But the next day came the man who guards you, took me to the second camp. Fifth camp. And fifth camp was the place where was located the central hospital. And then I understood that it is all the opposite of what I was thinking. And I began working in the infectionist barrack, where dysentery, or how do you say? Dysentery and loose syphilis and so on. I began working there. But my life at that time and good work wasn't stable. Because some of the people, perhaps including me also, I don't know, had to be shot. They had to be shot.
Because?
Not because. To frighten the rest. The calling out for this precision was usually in the night time, about 3 hours a.m. A whole brigade of the guards with rifles, automatic guns would come into the barrack, give commands, stay up,
get up.
Get up. Well, we certainly, and quickly. And the commander begins to read the list of people who are must be not transferred, how do you say?
Sure.
No. To transfer to other camp.
Yeah, transferred or relocated.
Relocated, I forget this word. That was every time, every night, when the condition, when our situation on the war was bad.
Yeah.
And as you know, that situation changed every day, several times. So every day, every night I should say, several times, they took 30 or 50 or 20 secluded people, and they were taken away to a place which we knew about many years later. Some place they were taken away. If they would be taken to another camp, we would know about it. We would know about it because there was a sort of a radio.
You call it a grapevine. A grapevine. A grapevine, it's...
Yeah. So my life, till the end of the war, was connected with such tragical moment when I and all people like me were each night awaiting to be executed. Each night. One night when the people were taken out, everyone crossed himself that it was not him. But he was not sure that he shouldn't be the next.
Yes.
Understand? Then came 40 1945, when the war was over. And I was invited to work in the venerological clinic. And it was given to me a pass where I could go out of the zone anytime and for long as I need. So I was approximately a free man. But and the people who were being treated by us were not seclusion people, not seclusion. And they knew that we need something to eat and so on, and everyone who would come to us, they would leave some cigarettes or a can of some, you understand, leave to us for
They leave you
thankfulness.
something.
Yeah, you. And this what we received, we had to make a payment to the guard which passes us into the camp and out of the camp. That was our gift to him. That was why he was very anxious that we should, as more as it is possible, to go out of the camp, because we would bring him. That's his position. He also didn't have anything, understand?
So now, I want to go back to your father, because now the tape on my camera, we're running short of tape now. So what I want to know, you see, your father is my children's great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
So what I want to know is, what do you think your father, what messages would he like to pass on to his great-great-grandchildren? What were the main themes? What were the main things that he taught you, and what were the main things?
I think that his wish, that's I think so, that his wish is not much different from my wish, because he's my father, and I used to try to think just as he thinks. He was a sort of my tutor in life, my teacher. Well, if to think what he would say that he was very glad that his потомство, well, the children who is left after father, how it is called?
The progeny.
Progeny.
The progeny.
Progeny.
Yeah.
That the progeny live a real good, favorable life, that they all look very beautiful and smarty and healthy, and he would say that he has a big regret that he, while being alive, couldn't do much enough so his children would live just as good and in good prosperity like the children of his children. I think that is what he would say. He would say also that you must never stop to gather information. All information which is possible to absorb with the brain
and
learn, because the brain has such a big capacity that no matter how much information you get from your being, from your from the world, it will never be fulfilled. So try to do your best. Love your neighbors, love your relatives, be kind to them, and remember that your grandfather had only one wish, that his following generation would be lucky, happy, and healthy.
Do you feel any bitterness for the difficult experiences you've had in your life?
Did I feel what?
Bitter,
Do you feel
angry?
sad how things were?
Dear Nicolai, this word is absolutely not suitable. To be angry, what does it mean to be angry? When you lose the right to live as a human being, and when you are spit all over your body by the government which you believed and loved, I should say, when you have lost your youth, which will never return back again, how must such a man think about his life, which has passed by like a meteor? You understand? And where is the place of bitterness? What means bitterness? Nothing. If, for instance, we should imaginally say that they owe me for all my trouble and disaster, they must pay me something for it, for instance. And I thought, what sum would be
Enough.
suitable or enough for all that I have lost? And you know, I didn't find such a numeral to which is equivalent to what I have lost. It is impossible to pay, to apologize, and so on. For instance, they cut off your hands and then they say that we apologize, we made a mistake. You looked very much for the man whom we had to do it. You look like him, but we made a mistake, excuse us. How do you think? What would you feel if they cut your legs, cut your arms, wounded your heart? What would you feel? What would feel a normal man, a normal?
Well, bitter.
I say, you know, I understand this word, but I think this
It's not enough.
simple word.
Питание.
Сейчас идет съемка.
А перерыва там не бывает?
Нет.
Сколько там перерыв?
Yeah. I thought that what could, how do you say it, compensate.
What would compensate for what has happened to you?
Yeah, that's right. That's the word I
But
was.
there is no
There
compensation.
is no equal value to compensate that which I and most of the people like me have lost forever, and which will never be returned to us again. First of all, our youth, the youth years. I was a young man. It was just the time when I must be growing and rosing ahead, and perhaps I had an opportunity to be much more than I was, you see. But it happened so that I'm sitting here now, and my darling nephew asks me, do I feel bitter? Excuse me, that's my mind.
Why did you choose not to tell your son these experiences until he was 14?
That is a good question. I didn't want him to know what had happened with me, because if he would know about it, he would somehow, somewhere, could say about it.
And this was the time when there were still dangers.
That's right. What he said is just what I wanted to say. And the time didn't pass by yet. But when he was 14, he was more, well, he was a more elder. I thought that he would understand what had happened, and he must know what happened with his father, and not to stay on his knees and cross his heart on this man who dictated dictated our life. You know who I'm meaning, yeah?
So now, after these years have passed and you've had these experiences, what is your philosophy of life? What does it all mean?
That is the most, I should say, the most serious and the most heavy question which could be put before me to answer you. What is my opinion of life? It is a very complicated, you see, very complicated. And I don't think enough that I have enough knowledge and enough courage to answer this question.
Sasha, what you've been through, what you have been through already has given you the sort of courage and the vision to view how life really is.
Yeah. While we were living in Emiliano in Siberia, there was a club where they showed movies, and there was shown a picture from the war life where a man who was starring the picture found a young boy about 3 or 4 years old, and he took him to himself, and the boy said, "You're my father." This old soldier looked at him, the tears dropped from his cheeks, and he said to this little boy, "Yes, I am your father." Because the boy lost all his family, and he was alone. At that moment, I felt some kind of a heart attack, such inconvenience. And I told Maria, "Let's go home. I'm not able to watch this tragedy." And the next day I got an infarct.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was the first attack at that moment. Now, when Joe, I must tell you about it, Joseph, that's your Uncle Joe, who died 2 years ago. I couldn't go to the cemetery. I felt that if I should go to the cemetery to say him soft earth, as Russians say, soft earth, I wouldn't live anymore. So I didn't go
Надо
even
бы еще покушать.
Mary says perhaps you want something else to eat.
Just a beer. Thank you. Beautiful.
Да говорю.
You get?
Well, I couldn't
Yeah,
get
we get the message.
Hmm?
We get the message.
What message?
Are you going to talk some more?
Ah.
So you couldn't go to visit your brothers.
No, I can't do it. You see, I can't do it. I have a son. I have a family. I must try as best to live as more long as I can to guard my family. You understand? That's my duty, my task, which I must execute. I can't go, I can't. When my friend, which I showed you on the picture, we were acquainted 50 years. We both were in camp for 10 years together. When he died, I also didn't go to the cemetery. I'm afraid that moment when they put the coffin in the earth, I'm so afraid of that moment that I think I couldn't live anymore after that. Sad story, huh? Sad story. And then we came to Emilianovo, to Krasnoyarsk. There was no work for me, but nobody knew that I'm from Sakri. Nobody. Because they didn't control my passport and so on, it wasn't written there. But there's no work for me on specialty. So I was offered to a post of director of a shop. I worked as a director of the shop for about 6 months, and all the people were very satisfied of my work, very satisfied. And after that, they invited me to the party and asked me, "Are you a party man?" I said, "No, I don't think that I deserve to be a party man yet. I didn't do much enough."
The party being the Communist Party?
Yeah.
Not
yeah.
a party?
No, communist. I didn't do much enough to be a party man.
It's a good day.
Sasha, can I just tell you, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
On this tape now, there is only 3 minutes to go. And after 3 minutes, that's it. No more tape.
After 3 minutes, you can really say what you want to say.
So, is there anything you want to conclude this tape with? How would you like to occupy the last 3 minutes of
The
this
last
tape?
3 minutes, I will try to forget that there's 3 minutes left. Otherwise I will be hurrying and I couldn't say anything that would be understood by the people who will sometime try to listen what I'm talking. I want that I wish, as my father wished, that all my relatives sometime would gather together, just like we are here, see each other's eyes, and feel the relative unit. You see, that we are relatives. We have common blood. It doesn't matter how much of the blood, even if 1 drop is, that's enough. I would like that to be. And else I must say, I would like good life for as my dad would say, good life to my children, my relatives, good health, happy life, honest life, to love people who surround you and be lovable by them as well. And that, I think, is the more proper way which a proper man must go by. I thank you for your attention. Perhaps it happened so that perhaps that we shall meet together on your shore. I mean the place where you live, where you were born. Perhaps it happened so. I'm not very sure that it is possible, but the hope dies lost. Is there such a phrase in English?
There is now.
No.
There is now.
Now there is such a phrase.
No?
Now there is. You just coined the phrase.
Yeah, really?
Yes, in the hotel today they also coined a phrase. We asked for the return of our passports.
Yeah.
And they said, you must go to the service garot. So this was also coining a new phrase. Because service in a Russian hotel is like a service garot.
Yeah, I understand you and I understand your mood. Find a job for Anya. That is what I want.
Listen.
For 1-2 months,
Yeah.
she should work abroad
Yeah.
to better her English.